continuing with this theme of China again, because I believe China to be so very important in the world affairs, has been for lately, the last few years, and even more so now. And we saw last week, we saw that it was making big inroads in Latin America. And we saw to what extent that was. We'll do a little recap as we go along. And then, of course, prior to that, we saw that it was already making a lot of headway in Asia. And of course, Asia is very big. And the parts of it that we talked about, specifically concerned with Pakistan, there was a big sort of CPEC effort there, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And of course, we can't leave out Europe. Europe has not been too engaged with the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Now, what it is let me just go to about our agenda today. Here we are. So essentially what I'm going to be focusing on is Europe today, but it's on the back of, if you like, what already has happened in Pakistan, in Iran, in ASEAN countries, and South America. Because the theme there also has been infrastructure. See, what has happened is that China developed quite rapidly because of this mixed economy that they have, capitalistic and socialist. And we also saw that the two invisible hands were at work. One was in the capitalist system, the market, the invisible hand of the market. So that was also being sort of used very well in China. And the other one, of course, the state involvement in all sectors of the country. So these two forces have given China a real boost in making itself into what it is today, a near superpower, and soon to be the superpower in many ways, especially economic. And we'll see how it is making, what sort of progress it's making. So what we're going to be talking today mostly is about, of course, Europe. Now, Europe has not really sort of jumped on the bandwagon because they feel threatened in some ways by China in the way that it's moving rapidly so fast into all sorts of traditional domains that have been, if you like, the handmaiden of the West. So what we are seeing now is a slow encroachment of this Belt and Road type of infrastructure and other sort of aspects of that huge narrative that China has brought to bear. And it's going to be affecting Europe as well, and we'll see how. And the countries that are involved, of course, are Germany, Italy, and Belarus. We'll talk a little bit more about them today. And of course, that infrastructure has to do with the railways, ports, and highways. We've seen that before. And we'll also talk a little bit about what are the countermeasures that are being planned. Now, here, maybe it's interesting to just point out that there is no counter narrative that is coming out to oppose China's grand narrative of the Belt and Road Initiative, the new Silk Road, if you like. So because there is no sort of counter narrative, more than 150 countries have gone towards China in terms of engaging with China to try and do further trade with them. Trade can be, of course, of many types. And China, in turn, has got the expertise that it has developed very, very quickly in the last few decades. And that expertise is what it's bringing to offer the countries that can't pay hard cash to them for the infrastructure that they want in their countries. So what is the counter narrative? The counter narrative is not there. So the latest thing that I heard, I think on the radio the other day, was that Biden is going to be having a different change of tone with China, but will still want to keep America ahead. Of course, like any other country, they don't want to sort of let another country go ahead, especially when they're traditionally the leaders like USA has been. So they would like to, in fact, maintain the leadership of USA, which suffered quite a bit when Trump was around. And the damage, I think, is still being assessed. First, the damage was in the leadership. I think a lot of people felt that USA had lost the moral ground. Secondly, as part of the loss as well is the trade. A lot of trade was going towards China. We saw that in the map I showed you, where in 20 years, where the globe was practically blue, and blue signifying the amount of imports that were coming from USA to the countries involved. And 20 years later, which is 2020, the map is virtually red. So most of the countries are importing a lot of stuff from China. So you can see the tremendous amount of change that has taken place. So Biden has got a big job in his hand to try and resurrect, if you like, the leadership of USA, or on the moral grounds, on the moral high ground, as it were, or on the trade side, or even on the technology, because even technology has been affected. And because of the immigration policies to some extent that Trump had brought in, which is to curtail all immigration, a lot of students stopped going over there, with the result that China is drawing a lot of students coming their way. And of course, I'll be talking about Germany today, how Germany is attracting a lot of them coming their way. Now, student is a very good yardstick to measure, because these are the people who go back home and create the new products. And if they happen to stay in the country where they have been educated as well, they will be contributing in a very substantial manner as well. So let's get on and see what is happening in Europe as far as China is concerned. Well, here, those people, again, this is a reminder. The grand narrative of China is the BRI, which means that they are going to be reaching out to all the countries of the world through projects which are going to be helpful for those countries out there to bring in their products into the country, into China, and China in turn will be exporting their products to all these countries. And to be able to sort of let that happen, you need to have infrastructure. And that infrastructure is not only just on the land, but also on the sea. See this light blue you can see here. See? So it's a completely comprehensive thing. And of course, in the next thing, I will show you a bit more. Okay, just a reminder again, 136 countries and 30 organizations have signed up to this BRI. It's a humongously big one, up to $8 trillion. And of course, it has the basic sort of notion of the old uh, good that Silk Road did to China and to the Europe in the old days. So it has got a nice romantic side to it as well, which is now given the complete sort of, if you like, the good basis for development of the future. Now, this is a thing which is showing you again this grand narrative of China, which is what it's trying to do to various other countries, how engaged it is. Now, the little dots are the ones which are saying there are loans allocation. So loans have been given to these countries in where the little spots are shown. And where the big sort of circles are, these are the hubs. And we talked about one hub here in Pakistan, you remember, the Gwadar, the deep sea one, which is going to be sort of making a big difference to all of Western China, especially the Uyghur country and all of Central Asia here. And of course, the maritime sort of hubs are there as well. So they are, in fact, going about it in a very planned fashion. Now, this sort of map, rather sort of, it struck me, looks a bit like the map of the old USA's bases all over the world. So you can see the difference that you can, in change of presentation, that on one side you've got infrastructure and all these projects underway, and the other side you've got bases, which is really, that is why USA is having a tremendous amount of reflection to see how the hell can they uh, uh, have a counter narrative to China. And as I was saying earlier on, Biden has had a report recently submitted to him that the best way to tackle China's narrative from USA side is not to sort of come out with another Belt and Road initiative, which I think will be quite impossible, but really to target China ruling elite. Now think about it. So what the report is saying is, look, Xi Jinping has become very autocratic. He's got a lot of people around him who are sort of following him very closely and supporting him. And he's elected himself as a president for life. We've got to target him and sort of somehow make him ineffective. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but that seems to be what the report was saying. I don't think it's going to be an easy task. So we'll see how things develop. Now, this again, the extent of the Belt and Road Initiative. So just imagine USA now trying to come in and make an impact in all these countries. I mean, this is practically 3/4 of the world here. And if you include China, it's probably more than 80%. And of course, we talked about Latin America. That's also coming under the ambit of China to a large extent. So the few countries that are left are Europe here, to some extent there, USA, Australia here, and India. Well, again, a recap of what we did last week. China is taking a lot of stuff uh, from Latin America, and of course, Argentina is giving them soya beans. Now, there's an endless amount of appetite of China for soya beans. So a lot of stuff is coming from South America, especially now that the American farmers lost their market because when Trump came in and imposed all these tariffs on China, they lost that market, and that market went off to South America. So you can see all these beans are going there now. Oil is coming from Africa, and we talked about that a bit. Anyhow, let's move on. Again, I won't go into all this, but that's again in the last 10 years that this has happened. This Belt and Road Initiative have come in and has made a dramatic change to a lot of countries. Now, the G7 is a group of countries that have been outside of the Chinese orbit. But then what has happened is that China started to make inroads into Italy. And of course, very much now into Germany as well. But German involvement is much to do with like bilateral trade and trade between EU and China. Italy has a lot more loans and so on being offered by China because the economies were a bit weak. So this encroachment into this group of 7 is worrisome to USA very much. Now, these are the areas in Europe that we can see here are very much part of that Belt and Road. Athens is already part of that in Greece. Then you've got Venice and you've got Rotterdam. So these are all now linked up to it because these are the big sort of ports and big sort of trade hubs as well for Europe. Now, Germany is the big sort of country in Europe, which is the one which will lead the way in a way as to how much China can be brought into Europe. But we are seeing now Germany already is very much into big trade deals with China. So they have very good relations, trade relations, especially since Trump came in. Trump sort of took the hard line with China, whereas Germany, being a lot smarter, I think they are saying, look, trade can be good for both countries, and therefore we will be able to gain with the winning, the win-win strategy that China always talks about. So now what Germany is doing is to diversify. They don't want to necessarily put all the eggs on the same basket of China. So they're going to extend beyond that into ASEAN countries. That's the Southeast Asian nations, and India as well. And of course, Germany and USA, Trump didn't get on with Angela Merkel, as you saw. He in fact refused to shake hands with her also. So that pivot away from USA, has meant, of course, that Germany became much more into went into more trade with China. So what they're doing is they're developing more market access, and there should be a reciprocity, because what has been happening, and one of the complaints that USA has been making to China, is that their companies can come into USA and to the West, and they do all sorts of trade and buy companies and take shares and whatnot, and yet when you go into China, they are restricted. So this reciprocity is something that Germany is developing with China for Europe as well. So I think they're making some headway, because China says, yes, we are open to that. We don't necessarily, but because your market was all open, we came in and did it, and bought into it. So now the rules have got to be changed. Now that China can actually buy into such big sort of companies with big stakes that China is able to afford. Now also Germany is starting to be like a mediator between USA and China. And that is helping, Germany has always been a sensible country since the war anyway, that there has been much more effort put into their growth, and they have developed enormously. I think the third biggest GDP country in the world, I think. So Germany, amazingly successful in Europe, and can be a good core between USA and China. Now Italy has come in a fashion as well, but not having direct investment coming into Italy, but rather by way of loans as well. Whereas in case of Germany, I think they haven't given loans as much, but they have made foreign direct investment. And in Belarus is a small little country, and here they are very much inviting China to come in and help them develop their economy and their trade, and that we'll talk about as well. Now, as Germany is concerned, the revenues from China in percentage-wise, this is the total, the DAX, the stock market, is where 15% of that came from China. Sorry. Oops. Yeah. Now, in 2020, 42% of Volkswagen revenues came from China, which is half their revenues, in fact. And Volkswagen is one of the biggest, what they call ICE country, internal combustion engine, which is soon going to be phased out, because with Tesla coming in a big way and EVs, that's electric vehicles, coming in a big way, I wonder if that sort of position is going to be maintained. And BMW, 34% of their revenues coming from China, and Adidas and other companies. So you can see big amounts of trade being done by Germany with China. Now, this is just a little town. It's a sleepy little village in southwest Germany, they say. Until 2013, it was quite a sleepy. But then what happened was that China got interested, and what they did was they set up a business center along with some German entrepreneurs in an old barrack of US Army. And before long, 300 entrepreneurs came into that center, and it became a real big part of the local economy. So you can see immediately a small little village taking a lot of importance. In fact, one of the other countries, other places called Duisburg, and that I will mention and show it to you as well later. Now, Germany's total trade with selected countries, you can see these here. This red thing is China. You can see it's progressing very, very steeply. And these other countries, the Netherlands is this yellow one, France is this light blue, Italy, United States. So you can see there has been a dip. I think the dip has been during the financial sort of crisis, 2008. Yeah. Even China was affected a little bit. But then it picked up really rapidly and making really headway. So a few more figures here. This 2018 figures is what I had. Chinese FDI coming into Europe, 12 billion, up by 4% since 2017. And then Chinese FDI in North America at the same time went down 92%. So it went down to about 2 billion. So you can see the shift that is taking place by China, much more focused now also in Europe rather than USA. And the sectors that are in being sort of helped which are active are automotive. We saw that BMWs and Volkswagens were very, very sort of doing well. Healthcare products and of course consumer products, materials and electronic stuff. So there is quite a spectrum of materials of the economy that are engaged in. So if you look at Chinese FDI recipients, who are the recipients? Now these are the ones. But then this thing here, you can see, has gone down considerably, down to 2 billion. Whereas I think UK is still doing relatively well, because I think one of our nuclear sort of thing is being financed by China as well. So I think HS2, China wanted to build it, but I think they didn't. It wasn't acceptable to UK. So these are China and Germany relations opportunities as investment ties grows. So this graph is showing us here that 26% is all automotive vehicles, railways, trams, and so on. So quite a lot, big part of the investment and ties are with in the transport sector and vehicles. Electrical goods as well, this here orange thing here, quite a substantive part of this whole business. Then you've got 20% is these machineries, because Germany is very good at making machineries. Now, one of the things that I just saw the other day was, that Elon Musk is making these, what he calls gigafactories to make Tesla cars. And he's improving the process continuously. And the factory in Germany, which is being built, half built, they're coming up with a new way of trying to get the reduction in their processing costs quite a bit by adopting a new way of painting the cars. Before it used to take about a day and a half to 2 days to paint the car, each car. Now with this process, they're down to about 15 hours, I think, or 18 hours. And what they do is they take the whole sort of the car shell and dip it into a swimming pool type of tank and pull it out, and that's it. So, now the reason why they can do that is because they have also got machines from Italy that Tesla has bought that can make these multiple parts into one part. Forge, like a forge machine, what they do is if you put a big sort of sheet of metal, you can put a press on that and it comes out in the right shape that can be used in the car. So those types of techniques, I think, are making for the process very, very easy. And these are the types of machines that Germany is also making. As Elon Musk says, making of the big machine to produce the little machines being the cars. the big machine being the factory. Okay, Sino-German trade volume exceeded 166 billion. That's quite a big amount, making mainland China, Germany, third most important trading partner. And Germany is mainland China's sixth most important trading partner. So there is some sort of complementary type of thing. That both are equally sort of important to each other. And that is why Germany is saying that China can be regarded as a strategic partner for peace, stability, and wealth of the world. And China wants to hear that type of language rather than the threatening language of saying that you're making the world a worse place by making it debt-ridden and taking control and so on. So no sensible talk with China is taking place. And we saw also, we talked about how last time the media was totally negative about China. And that, I think, is doing a lot of those countries who are so totally negative to China a lot of harm to them. Now, here is the sort of thing that they're putting in students. See, a lot of Chinese students are going to Germany. Number of students from 2013, 27, 12, 25, and in 2011, 24, and now, 27. So a lot of them are not going so much to USA, but now going to Germany. So you can see now, one of the things about the students is that if they get qualifications and experience, they come back and produce the good products that help the country. Here's a student population shown in terms of these sizes of these blobs here. And this purple blob is most students going to Germany. And this green one, you can see only 5,000 students from USA going into Germany. So you can see maybe because US has good institutions and so on, perhaps they didn't need to go to Germany, but the fact that all other countries seem to want to go to Germany suggests that Germany has a lot to offer. Now, this is the number of international students here into Germany. Half of them, you can see, are coming from China, another quarter of them from Turkey, and then here's Russia. So Russia, Turkey, and China make up half of the total student population in Germany. And of course, German sort of standard of education is extremely high. Now, freight train, they also connected Germany with the freight train, covering this route. So in 2015 already, it was starting to sort of have a connectivity. There were already 400 trains plying between China and Germany, carrying goods. A record quantity of goods from China in 2016, more than 40,000 containers between the two countries. And the company intends to carry by 2020, which has done 100,000 containers. So you can see the amount of bulky stuff as well is finding its way into China and out of China. And some of the things are, of course, in the vehicle parts of BMW and things coming from various parts of the supply chain there. So essentially saying that this is from a Silk Road to a Silk sort of rail type of. See, China is very good at rail connectivity. We said in some of the previous sort of talks that we had that they have the highest number of 16,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. Of course, many times more is the freight type of rail. And here they're showing the connectivity from China right up to a place called Duisburg. Now, Duisburg is a little village near Dusseldorf. And it is really making a lot of impact to the local economy because the Chinese have come in and making big investments there. So China is very good at building ports. We saw that in Gwadar. And then, of course, the rails, we just mentioned it again. So the other country, of course, that is also benefiting from China is Belarus. It's a tiny little country, but it's got big ambitions. First time. Yeah, I think it's finished, is it? Yeah, okay. Just coming back to Belarus, tiny little place, but has great ambitions. And what they're trying to do is to attract China to come to the country and build this big agreement that they've made. You can look at that. This is an agreement on all sectors of the economy. And we'll see a little bit more of that. The park will focus on developing high-end manufacturing electronics, biomedicine, fine chemistry, logistics, storage, and other industries. So a fairly sort of large spectrum of industries there. So far, there are 37 projects set up in the park from 8 countries. So when China is building that park for Belarus, Belarus is inviting other countries as well to come in and produce. Belarus serves as an important passage linking Eurasia and the European Union on the Atlantic port. So they're positioned well to be able to sort of service Europe as well as Central Asia and Southern Europe as well. This is just showing the type of trade volumes that has continuously been on the increase from China into Europe. These are the sort of things that they do in the industrial park. They've got the habitations, and then the transport links and all that. I'll show you a better map of that. Yeah, this is the industrial park. This is very near Minsk. Minsk airport is here. So this industrial park is right there, which is connected by a railway line and all this highway, the green one, and light railways as well. And then you've got the motorways as well, and connectivity to Moscow. So well positioned over here to see, and to Berlin here. Is going to Berlin there. So what are they going to be having here? 50% of the is greening. So they want to make this park not just into a concrete slab of buildings, but into a green type of area, so that we'll have a vegetation coverage rate of 50% of that. So it is going to be also pleasant to be able to live there or work there. So they have the green belt. They've got the living areas divided up. Production, this is where all the industry is going to be. So going about it in a very sort of methodical manner. Yeah, here we are, South Reserved Area for Development. Then you've got this West Commercial and Residential areas. The scientific research areas here, development, and production and manufacturing area here. So if one puts these types of industries in the right places, I think it's a big benefit to the Belarus. There you can see a picture of that there. And what are the benefits that countries coming into will get? They'll get a 10-year exemption of taxes, followed by another 10 years of 50% tax reduction. So anybody who wants to make goods can go into that park and set up a factory and export out without having to pay taxes. And you can then have to sort of deal only with having to pay any import taxes. If it is, I don't know whether Belarus is part of Europe. I'm not sure, maybe it is. Yeah, in which case all of Europe, it can be sort of traded without taxes. I think Belarus is part of Europe, yeah. Here we are. This is just showing us the connectivity to China in the big sort of blue lines there, and all the sort of routes out of Belarus to various parts of Europe. This is another similar picture You can see once you start producing stuff, it can go from Ukraine to other places, Germany, to Kazakhstan, Central Asia. So it covers all of Asia and parts of Europe. So they have a big ambition, and I think with China being a partner, I think they'll be quite successful. Italy. Now, Italy is very good on communications and so on, roads. So China found that in order to be able to have a sea access to Europe, Italy is the place to sort of be coming through. So here you have, they gain access to Italy's ports, the infrastructure to expand trading routes from the Mediterranean to Northern Europe. It's a priority for the Chinese. So they have Italy State Naval Construction Group. This Fincantieri last year also struck a deal to make cruise ships. So China is coming in with investment and also with the loan, which is why Italy was keen to go in, because the economy wasn't doing too well. Now, what are the countermeasures? The countermeasures, again, as said earlier on, there aren't any as such. Because China has surged so far ahead on the various fronts like commerce, on technology, on transportation, and having a unified plan, that it's difficult to counter each one of that at every level. And the only way that seems to be what has been proposed in that paper I mentioned earlier on is to target this Xi Jinping and his close circle of people. Maybe put sanctions on them or something of that sort. But I don't think it's going to sort of really make a lot of difference, because to counter something like the BRI, you need to be having something really attractive to a lot of countries. So that is that is not there. So and we said again, basically what we are saying is that United States thing is the other narrative that they have against China is that it can be a debt trap, which we talked about earlier on. Now, this is the trade path. I told you about that. In the year 2000, the blue USA was supplying goods to all these countries all over the world. And now, 20 years later, in 2019, most of them are supplied by China. So you can see the impact that China is making is humongous. So let's stop there, and we'll have some Q&A. I'll stop the sharing. Okay. Oh, hi there. Okay, we are.
Rafiq, may I ask the abbreviation FDI, what does it stand for?
Foreign direct investment. As opposed to a loan coming in from abroad, the company or the country is putting money or investment into the country at their own risk.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I have to unmute you.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, let me unmute you all. Oh no, I think you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yes. I don't know if you've dealt with this in previous sessions, but what do you make of the pressure to stop, for example, Britain signing a trade agreement with China alleging concentration camps?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure to what extent we can actually believe some of the hype or the media hype that we listen to, because the larger sort of narrative is missing. The larger narrative is missing because there is no counter to the BRI. And therefore, one could then take shots at the individual failings that might be considered to be a failing. Whereas what China says is that, look, we are trying to develop with a model that has been very successful and has proved to so successful that we are now, the second superpower in terms of GDP in the world. On all this in a matter of a few decades. So if we are approaching our problems with the way that we are, then why should it be a problem to a lot of people? Well, a lot of world is concerned simply because they feel that their position, which was the status quo, which was the leadership position of the West in the world, that is coming to maybe a decline and maybe overtaken by China. So then one is able to look at and see why are these individual things being targeted, like even the Hong Kong and the Uyghurs and various other little things that keep mentioning in our press every day, you know? Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I
Yeah,
come in?
Surya.
Yeah. Do you know this is quite scary? If China is doing all this in Germany, and Belarus, do you think Britain will still remain the world power? Because,
Oh, it is the world.
pardon? I mean, we are
Well,
the fourth largest in the world, but if all this is happening in Belarus and all these cheap exports going all over the world, I mean, Britain will have not have much future, will they really?
uh, when I look at the leadership in Xi Jinping, well, very, very well educated, also experienced at various levels of government, and he comes to the top, so he has some little vision, which I think is also a fantastic vision, which I support anyway, and a lot of countries do. So here is a man who's showing leadership because he's come through, through the ranks in a way. And if you look at Angela Merkel as well, she has come through the ranks as well.
Yeah.
So there is another leader who knows what it is all about. Now, if I look at Boris or if I look at Trump,
Yeah.
I don't have enough confidence that they have the necessary sort of background to be able to take good decisions. And I think this is why UK has landed itself into a rather sort of difficult situation. And we've had this Brexit. So I, for one, feel that sooner or later, maybe we will elect a government that will take us back into Europe. Yeah. Yeah, Malia.
Why are we the third or fourth biggest country, this GDP thing? Why are we? Is it just because we spend a lot of money on credit cards? We don't make anything, do we?
That's right. What we have done is it GDP is a gross domestic product, which means it's the accumulation or the aggregation of all the value that we produce. So it's that metric, that measure. It doesn't measure, for instance, the work of family, looking after family members, for instance. You know, so if you've got that type of measure, it's a measure which is really coming out of factory production, you could say. You see, now we have lost a lot of that in manufacturing, but we have swapped it over with what is called the financial services.
Yeah.
Now, financial services has a big sort of sector in our economy, and we are doing well because there are so many reasons for that. One, of course, geographically, we're located between the East and the West. I mean, in the sense of New York and of Hong Kong. And secondly, we've got the language advantage, which, of course, everybody in the world practically speaks. So London has maintained a very good position in terms of providing services, whatever kind they may be. So that sector has grown, and the people, the captains of industry, as it were, have not really pursued the opportunities that they had right after the Imperial Britain's days, when Britain was really the global power and had 3/4 of the world under its influence, and a market which was very sizable. But once that went, in the 40s, after the Second World War, that market also disappeared. And that left Britain without too much to sort of fall back on. And fortunately, what happened was that Europe came along, and Europe then sort of gave some time for it to sort of recover, and did quite well, I thought, until of course Brexit came along. And that's why I feel that Brexit is not necessarily in our interest. But the question that you asked about the GDP, it's the manufacturing that we have lost to a large extent for so many reasons, and to a large extent, people not having the vision. Yeah, Malila.
Yeah, I was concerned about the attitudes of the US as opposed to China. China has always traded, trade, they don't invade. Now they've invested in the Colombo, the port in Sri Lanka. They virtually own it. Now that's part of their plan for trade. Now I understand the US is very interested in Mauritius, which is just there in the Indian Ocean. And they say it's because of trade, but there's a lot of concern that knowing the US focus on military power and military engagement, that it's just an excuse to get a foothold for that purpose rather than a bigger strategy of trade.
Yes, of course. I mean, these little islands,
Yeah.
they are ripe for being, the basis in a way for the bigger powers that play their own game. As far as Colombo is concerned, the big sort of port that was built by China, I think we spoke about it some time back. It was a massive project, uh, reclaiming land as well in the sea.
Hmm.
All that has been done, but what has not happened is that the intended traffic that was anticipated didn't come. So the fault, in a way, lies with both, I suppose. That China had its own sort of reasons for developing Colombo, because it gave them a base of a sort, or opportunity for a big sort of center of influence for them. And they made a deal with Colombo saying that if you're not able to pay back the loan, then we will come and manage the port ourselves for 30 years,
Yeah.
40 years, or whatever.
Hmm.
So that's what happened, because the Sri Lankan government was not able to manage the port successfully, to be able to make the infrastructure that had been created work for it. Maybe it was probably over ambitious, perhaps, on the part of
Yeah.
Sri Lanka. But
Yeah.
I think in the future, I think it is a good potential for Sri Lanka to be so well positioned over there and having a good infrastructure at their disposal. So initially, I think they are going to lose out, but I think in the long run, they will win. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Jim. You put your audio.
My questions about technology and in particular AI, because you mentioned that China's getting an advantage in technology. Were you referring to AI? Because the potential of AI combined with the power of the processing power dramatically increasing, that could change the whole context.
Yes,
If you think about that,
because
could be
you
an
see,
advantage for America.
yeah, see, AI to a large extent depends also on data. Now, just to highlight a bit of a difference between what is data as to what is information. See, data is just numbers that you collect from whatever it is. And then if you process the data, you get information out. Now, if you've got plenty of data, which is what China has got through its huge network, 5G network, in fact, and the 4G as well, they're collecting data on every individual, and they are able to then use these AI algorithms to be able to go through that data to come out with information that could be used. So that is a big advantage that they have, which the West doesn't have as much, because this data, this network, we do collect data as well, Like Google has the data, Apple has the data, and the government has their own. But they're not sort of coordinated or, or in a way integrated to be able to do something substantive, because these issues of freedom comes along, see, or privacy. So that's why our tracking system also failed, very badly over here. We couldn't do that. So we don't have the infrastructure also to be able to collect the data sufficiently quickly and well, to be able to then use the AI and go ahead with better sort of decision making. Now, this is why, this 5G, we talked about it some time back, because 5G enables you to give you instant type of uh, exchange. Like, for instance, if you've got a car which is going to be self-driven, like, we talked about that Tesla car, the FSD, fully service self-drive, sooner or later it's going to be coming. They need very fast reaction time. So if you don't have the type of network like 5G to be able to help with that, then you're going to sort of have a slower response as well to EVs as well. So network, that's one aspect of it, the time. The other aspect is how easily can it be done, and what is happening is that a lot of commerce, like you might have heard of Alibaba and people, companies like that, they're very well connected and they do a lot of commerce using telephones, using their telephones. So they are progressing very fast ahead on that front as well. So there is a bit of a catching up to do with the whole of the West.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you. Another one. What happens if countries can't pay back the loan they borrowed from China?
Well, I told you in the case of Colombo,
Yes.
what they had to do was to cede control to China for 50 years, I think. So that China then runs the port, but then all the ancillary and the spin-offs that you get from having a good port and and trade is that you do get the benefit as well. Maybe not the full benefit. That's one example. The other example that we talked about last time about Latin America, I think it was Argentina and Brazil, I think, where they are sort of making projects. Oh no, sorry, it was Venezuela, where they were making projects dealing with extraction of oil and some of the other ancillary industries. And the question came up was, how will they be paying for it? The paying was by oil. Payment was by oil. And China was making sure that the supply would not would stop if the drilling and all those facilities didn't work. So they helped them with that. So they're not going in with blindly to try and sort of take advantage of any country, but they feel that unless you give, the win-win situation, the basis, then you can succeed. Yeah, nobody else. Mailing.
Yes.
Yes, you usually have a question.
Well, my only not question is that a lot of people here in the West and America are worried about China being a superpower, forgetting until 200 years ago or 250 years ago, China was a superpower. And they seem to not realize that West superpower is a fairly recent thing historically. And yet there are people who say, what would the world look like when China take over instead of America or instead of England? And I think perhaps you ought to look into the whole history of superpower in the world to realize that China is not a sudden superpower.
Well, China was a superpower, but not an extended extraterritorial type of power. They were within the country itself, and maybe a few surrounding sort of little islands and what have you. When the British Empire was there, that was more territorial. You know, 3/4 of the world was British Empire. That was a superpower as well of the day. But now the definition of superpower changes. I think we are now much more, if you like, a power based on the economies, and the old-fashioned strategic power of gunboat, I think that is coming behind us. And what is ahead of us is probably those people who are smart enough to have the technology, you know, in their sort of countries and exploit those
Well,
to their advantage.
you were also talking about students going to Germany. First of all, in America, the student category visa came under immigration, so they stopped that. SARS was here with Cameron's time. So Chinese students were welcome to Germany, and so they went to Germany. Their natural destination would have been America or here, because their second language in China in school is English, not German. But because the choice was stopped, as you know, both Trump's administration and Cameron's administration were trying to put immigrants control, and which included students from China. So don't blame China for not sending students there. It's their own doing.
Well, the other interesting thing that's happening is that China is attracting a lot of students to its own universities, because they are sort of, you know, pulling ahead on the technology front quite a lot. And also what they're trying to do is they're trying to encourage students coming into their own country now. Because if you get the good sort of people coming in who are can make a contribution, then the country wins. You know? So I think China is already embarking on that. Right. Who's there? George.
Hi, how are you, Shafiq?
Fine, fine.
I'm just reeling from this lockdown, you know.
Yeah, getting us all down, actually.
Yeah. So what happened to all Chairman Mao's little red books?
Well, he read that book 10 times, I believe, Xi Jinping. But then he didn't follow it all the way, because what he wanted to do was to bring in these two invisible forces to play in the economy. One is the market invisible hand, and the other one being the state invisible hand, if you can call it invisible. So he sort of, didn't quite sort of follow Mao all the way.
No. It was a very interesting time with the Maoists in London. They used to pop up at meetings all over the place, you know, with their little red book. It was a very good time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last thing I heard about the Red Book was that somebody was reading it out in Westminster, in Parliament.
Yeah.
There's a Labour Party Red Book.
There is not the Red Book, is it?
Yeah, there is a Labour Party Red Book which lists all the rules and regulations, and it's called the Red Book, I think. But it was 5 years ago when I last.
Wasn't quite like Chairman Mao's though.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think we are at a good point in time, because we have to watch Biden closely now to see how much of an impact he's going to have to counter China successfully without having to resort to military sort of gains.
Well, I don't think they'd win on a military basis.
Sorry, that?
They wouldn't try a military solution, would they?
No, I don't think, because that's a lose-lose situation, if you ask me.
Yes, yeah.
I was thinking about, there was a talk about it recently, actually. They're worried about this, what's called the Thucydides trap. That's what they were talking about at the moment. It's a current topic where when one power gets more powerful, It's called the Thucydides trap. I'm not sure if you've heard about it in history.
No, what is that?
No.
Yeah, but one country will attack another country if it thinks it's going to be an up-and-coming power. There's a talk about that at the moment, actually.
What to attack China?
Shafiq, the only power that's prepared to use military force is China. I mean, just look at the way they deal with their border disputes in India. They quite ruthless about. Look at the way they've dealt with Vietnam, Philippines, etc. in the South China Sea. Quite straightforward military aggression. Look at how they're dealing with the democracy in Taiwan. Absolutely threatening them with military. I mean, the only power in East Asia that is threatening and using military force is China.
Yeah, hi Tom, welcome. It's the first time I'm seeing you in our sort of class.
I just clicked on at the end because I heard Mei Ling downstairs and I wondered what she was doing. and then I switched on and I found it's you, our arch Chinese supporter.
I'm rather pro-China.
Well,
unbelievable when you think of the way the Chinese have dealt with the Tibetans, Hong Kong, the Uyghurs, the Inner Mongolians. I mean, Shafiq, come on, wake up. The only aggressive power in East Asia is China.
China, yeah. I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Well, one of the things, what I'd like to
come to your defense.
Yeah.
Shafiq, I'll come to Shafiq's defense. We're always pointing the fingers outside of us. But what about what the Americans did to the American Red Indians?
Oh, come on, this is the 21st century we're talking about.
Long time ago.
Absolutely.
It's not a long time ago. It's less than 100 years ago. The Irish famine was over 100
It's
over 100 years ago. The Highland clearances, the Aborigines, the Maoris, every country in the world does it.
Oh, so that excuses China, does it?
No, doesn't excuse anything. I'm just saying, every country in the world does it.
So the China can come and take over
any other country.
Okay, let me just ask a question to you, Tom. What do you think is the counter narrative that we must have for China?
Oh, I think very straightforward. We have to guarantee the security of our allies, the democracies in that part of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and that means, thank God Biden said he's going to continue Trump's policy towards China. And he's making it clear that, for example, he will support Taiwan against mainland aggression. I mean, India is being forced off its neutral pedestal and is having to now form alliances with the Japanese and the Americans because they are being facing Chinese aggression. Vietnam has long since given up pretending that it's got any sort of friendship towards China. China is surrounded by a sea of countries which are very, very scared of Chinese aggression, and we have to give them the maximum support we can.
Yeah. I
agree with you.
I think one of the things that China is doing very, very successfully, Tom, is this trade blocks that it has created. You remember the TPP that Obama was talking about and trying to do something with? That was sort of, put aside when Trump came in. And in place of that, China brought in something called the RCEP, which is not only the old TPP, but includes Japan, Korea, and Australia as well. So they have a humongously big advantage in creating these trade blocks.
No, I'm sorry, Shafiq, I don't agree. That is a pale shadow of a trade agreement. It doesn't include services. It doesn't include tangible removal of restrictions on, for example, inward investment. It's a token agreement. It has no impact on flows of trade. And the 11-nation Trans-Pacific Agreement, which we have just applied to join, does not include China. And that does include very serious disciplines on illiberal trade policies. But the Chinese one is a joke. It's like India, the Indians pretend that they believe in free trade. They've never signed a serious free trade agreement in their history.
No, India was not part of that big regional.
No, it's not. It's not part of any of them. But that's another issue. But the Chinese agreement, I simply don't agree with you. It is a token. It's a cosmetic deal, but it doesn't involve any restrictions on the ability of the Chinese to impose limitations on the freedom of investment in our own market. It doesn't impose any restrictions on the ability of the Chinese to steal other people's technology. It doesn't give any benefits to anybody.
At the moment, so many countries have come to sign and be part of it. Does suggest that there must be something in it for them.
Oh well, look,
it can't be just a one-way street, because China's policy has always been to be able to try and have a win-win situation. Whereas,
you mean win for China?
The old model has been to give the advantage to people who had this sort of capital, or for that matter, who had an advantage of some sort. But the moment that advantage sort of was leveled up, and people started to lose from the old privilege. Go ahead.
There's a solution to both of your issues. In America, what they're doing, they're getting a situation where you can study, but the big companies will pay for your fees. So there's been a change now. It's a Quintech university, and study things, because I understand both of your points. So there's a compromise being made where the universities will work with businesses, and the businesses, especially technology, they'll teach you this is why I mentioned AI technology. They'll teach you the technology, and they'll pay for your university fees. That's what will happen. But in return, the companies will get a highly qualified person to work for their company. So I think
that only applies to postgraduate students.
I'm not sure.
You are tied down to go back to that company for 5 years afterwards.
Yeah, but
so it's both. It ties you down, and you can't get a company to pay for you unless you've been working there for a while and sign the obligation of afterwards service. My daughter-in-law did that, and she was very pleased with it, but it does not include undergraduate students.
Okay, but it's conceptually, what I'm saying is that there's a move towards there conceptually.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying long term, but I think in terms of training, to have students learn about AI and coding at school when they're 7-year-old, I think that would be a really good thing, because I think that's missing from the syllabus. That I know they're doing it in China. They're teaching 7-year-olds coding and AI, and I think that would be a good thing, because that's the way forward. I don't know if anybody would agree. Would you agree, Thomas?
Yeah, Jim, I know I went to college over here.
Yeah.
And I was very pleased to hear this lady who came this morning, Imperial College. So I didn't have to pay anything. In fact, the government gave me £350 to live for the whole year. And I paid £7 to my landlady. So, free education. And it was affordable to do that. Okay, not lavish type of grants, but it was sufficient. And then, of course, this £10,000. Then when my daughter started to go to college over here, I had to pay £10,000 a year for her education. Now, I don't know who's making big bucks out of this. It certainly hasn't done the country any good, if you ask.
He made the trains run on time.
Anyway, what I would say is, let's call it a day. We'll start talking about it another day, and then we are going to be talking about the type of issues that are interesting and are helpful.
What are you going to talk about next week?
Good to have you as well, Tom, this time around. Everybody, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Say something to you. If I don't join in a class, it's because I normally collect my grandson from nursery at 3. And that's why, but today I haven't because of the snow. So that's why I can't always join in, unfortunately.
Okay, no problem. I always have a recording, which I'll be sending it to you. I think you've got, you're on my email, right?
No, I don't think I
Then
am.
send me an email to my email address, and I'll include you in the list. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
That
very
applies
much.
to all of you. Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
What do you
bye.
do?
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Shafiq. God bless. Look after yourself.
Bye.